for most people, again, I personally think a combination of both of those accounts is going to be the best. And that's personally what I have, a stocks and shares ISA and a pension. The reason being is that stocks and shares ISAs grow tax-free forever and you can access them whenever, which is great. Whereas pensions, you get tax relief, so you avoid tax, which is particularly lucrative at higher rates of income. And if you're an employee, you can get an employer match, free money from your employer, what I was touching on earlier on my own portfolio. And then that money can then compound for decades to come, with the main sort of downside being it's locked up until you're 55. That's the current age.
You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FIRE. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FIRE instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Ryan, thank you very much for stopping by. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And Ryan, just to begin with, if you don't mind doing a really quick 60-second intro about yourself and what you're up to.
Yeah, no problem, Greg. Thanks for having me on, mate. And thanks to those who are listening. So my name is Ryan King. I'm 27 years old, nearly 28. I'm originally from England, although currently based in Australia. And I guess the reason why I'm on this podcast is because I run a social media platform called Making Money Simple, which is really, I started in 2019 just to break down financial jargon because there wasn't any UK specific content creators. And now here we are 6 years later, still going. And I recently published a book called Stop Waiting, Start Investing, which has probably been the pinnacle of the side hustle so far. But yeah, day job, still got that going on, a 9 to 5 working as a chartered accountant. And that's what I did in London and have brought me over to Australia and then doing Making Money Simple on the side. Other than that, love a pint of Guinness, love going on holiday, and I'm just a pretty normal 20-something-year-old bloke. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. So you mentioned there you're in Australia. I wanted to just really touch on that a little. How is I think you're in Melbourne. What's it like? What's living in Melbourne like, and how long have you been there?
It's really good, to be fair. I can understand why people move here and stay here for good. I've been here for 2.5 years now, and Melbourne's really good, to be fair. It's got, when it comes to, I guess, Australia specifically, it's got the best and the most sport, and it's got the best and most nightlife, which are probably two things I was interested in moving over. And then I guess when you compare it to, back home in the UK, it's a bit better weather. It does still rain, to be fair, and it is still cold, but it's a little bit better weather. So yeah, that's Australia.
It's interesting because I've done it before. There's a lot of people have done what's called geo arbitrage. So going from a place of, high living cost, and they'll go somewhere with sort of slightly lower costs. And obviously you're in that sort of accumulation phase on your journey. What was it like moving to Australia in terms of expenses and in terms of your investing and saving? Did it help at all, or is it the same as when you were back in UK, and or what was the differences in financially?
Yeah, I've been asked that before actually. I think overall I'd say the cost of living is probably similar. When I was in London, I'd say my rent was a lot more. It's much cheaper to rent in Melbourne. But then I'd say my probably food shopping is much dearer in Australia, in Melbourne, as is sort of like drinking and going on nights out. So probably overall across a month, I'd probably say it's a similar cost. I think if you're probably moving to Sydney would be more expensive than London. If you're from the north of England or maybe a cheaper area of England or the UK, then Melbourne would probably be much more expensive. But from going to London to Melbourne, it's probably a similar cost of living. And my salary is actually the exact same, to be honest with you. A lot of industries and jobs here, you get paid so much more compared to the UK. Teachers get double, doctors and nurses get a lot more, army-related jobs get a lot more. But when it comes to sort of financy roles, well, I'm an accountant. Accounting roles, definitely. The salaries are probably similar. So there's actually not a massive difference, to be honest with you. The lifestyle's different. But from a financial point of view, I'd probably say it roughly works out to be the same across expenses, taxes, income, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and obviously you obviously started investing back in UK, and then you obviously carried on in Australia. Was there any sort of challenges with? Because I mean, I done something similar. I was sort of investing back in UK, typical broker accounts and etc. And then when I moved to Philippines, some of these I couldn't access, and there was things I couldn't access back in UK, and things like sort of pensions and all sorts, and sort of the tax advantage accounts and stuff like that. How did that work with you? Was that a bit of a challenge, or was it pretty straightforward?
Yeah, I essentially just stopped using my UK investment accounts and just started using Australian investment accounts instead. So I've still got my ISA and pension in the UK, but I just don't contribute to them anymore because I'm not a UK tax resident. But I now have an Australian pension. Unfortunately, there's no Australian equivalent to an ISA. So I just have an Australian pension and an Australia general investment account. And I still invest monthly out of my 9 to 5 income and just put money into those two accounts every single month. So I've sort of tried to emulate my approach in Australia as closely as possible to what I was doing in the UK. But yeah, there are different accounts available. There are different brokers and platforms available. There are different funds available. So I had to do a bit of research and tweak it, but it's largely the same 3-step blueprint that I follow.
All right. So obviously we're going to get onto like investments and the money side of things in a bit. But I kind of wanted to understand, and obviously that's what you're known for, but I kind of wanted to understand Ryan as like a person, and what's Ryan like? And so, Ryan, what do you do like when the camera is not on you and the microphone's not on you? What does Ryan do? What do you do on like the weekends and evenings or whatever? What's your thing?
Yeah, so I'd say for quite a lot of my 20s, it was a lot of drinking and nights out. I've actually calmed down quite a bit, probably over the last year or so. So now, and maybe it is because the Australian lifestyle a little bit as well, being good weather, but I do run quite a bit. I've actually started cycling recently in 2025, so trying to get into the fitness era. A bit of hiking, especially in Australia when it's summer. There's some good hikes you can do in Victoria near Melbourne, so try and do those. And other than that, just sort of, yeah, I mean, I'm not far from the beach, so I can go to the beach. I still do nights out, like trying new restaurants, or probably just like sort of standard stuff that I guess anyone in their 20s or 30s would do. Nothing too special. And then, yeah, on the side, to be fair, I do spend a lot of time doing Making Money Simple and making content outside of my full-time job. But they're probably the main things. I'm also a big Arsenal fan, so I wake up at all hours of the night to watch the Arsenal games.
I was going to say that might be difficult to watch from the other side of the world.
But no, they're probably the main things that come to mind. But honestly, I'm a pretty like normal bloke, nothing too mental or interesting, just all sort of standard stuff that most people listening probably do as well.
Yeah, and then you mentioned obviously Making Money Simple. Again, we'll get to sort of later on. I find on this journey, it's good to kind of find things that you enjoy, things that you love doing, and that's part of what while we're doing this sort of like FI type stuff, isn't it? To kind of enjoy what we're doing. And would you say that's kind of like falls under that kind of finding your Ikigai, finding the things that you love doing, finding like your passion? That kind of falls under that, isn't it? Is that something you'd like to do? Maybe, when you do sort of retire in the future or
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think if I made enough money from Making Money Simple, I probably would do it full time. Unfortunately, nice. I don't at the moment. Partly because I guess my probably lack of trying to monetize it and not being too salesy, but I probably could do more to do that. But yeah, I would one day love to do it full time if I was able to make enough money from it. And I know other people do online. So that's something I'm trying to work towards. But in the meantime, I work as a chartered accountant and just do this on the side. And I guess, the reason why I've done it now for over 6 years is just because I enjoy it. If I didn't enjoy it, some months I make no money. If I didn't enjoy it, I would have given it up many, many years ago, to be honest with you. But I still, make content.
You're quite, you're on all the socials, and that takes a lot of time. Is it just yourself, or do you've got sort of a team, or how does that set up?
I'm just a one-man band, CEO, CFO, COO, CIO, everything at the moment. Yeah. Once again, though, I think one day I'd love to have it as a small business and employ people. And but right now it's unfortunately nowhere near that level. Maybe one day.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, okay. All right.
So just jump. Are you a one-man band as well?
Yeah, just one man, just similar to you. It's just like my passion project. Just enjoy doing it. So working full time as well, but I love to do it on in the evenings and weekends, chatting to people like yourself, putting out content. But yeah, still is my side, still in its early days. But yeah, I'm just enjoying the process and yeah, see where it goes.
Yeah, nice. That sounds good. Good on you.
Jumping back into sort of the area that you specialize in, which is the sort of saving and investment side. So can I just ask you about like how you're set up at the moment in terms of like what you're invested in, what your portfolio sort of allocation looks like? I know it's fairly simple, but just for anyone that doesn't know what you're investing in, can you just give a sort of brief picture of what that looks like at the moment?
Yeah, so I've got my MMS investment portfolio tracker up on the side, which has been going on for years and years, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. I would say a caveat first of all, because I've like lived in 2 countries, the approach is a bit messy. There's a lot of different accounts, some UK accounts, some Australian accounts, but right now I've got £140,000 invested, just over. It's worth saying that was well over 150k a few months ago. Because of the recent dip in 2025, it has come down a bit, and that's just the reality of investing. It is volatile in the short term. But yeah, I've got £140,000 invested, and literally £120,000 of that, more or less, is in global index funds and ETFs. So in my UK stocks and shares ISA and my UK SIP, all of my money, and across those two, I've got about 45 grand in my UK stocks and shares ISA and about 30 grand in my UK SIP. Both of those are with Vanguard, and both of those are in one fund, the FTSE Global All Cap. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor. It's just what I do personally. But my approach really is, and I go through this a little bit, quite a lot, in Stop, Wait and Start Investing. I just like the global index fund and ETF approach. I think it's the best and simplest approach because it minimizes your risk and maximizes your returns, which we can get into at some point over the long term. But that's my main 2 UK accounts. And then in Australia, I've got a Vanguard general investment account. All of that money is in a global ETF that's called a VGS. That's about £20,000 roughly in pounds, converted from Aussie dingo dollars. And I've then also got an Australian workplace pension, or it's called a superannuation here. And all of that, once again, is in just a low-cost global index fund. So that's probably my main 4 investing accounts. I've got a lot of other smaller investing accounts in both Australia and the UK because I just like opening up platforms, trying them out, seeing what they offer. But most of the money in all of those accounts also is in low-cost global index funds and ETFs. So, yeah, when it comes to my sort of stock market portfolio, it's about £120,000 and pretty much 99% of it is in low-cost global funds. Then the other £20,000 roughly of my portfolio is actually in crypto, which I understand is very different to low-cost global funds. But that is mainly spread across Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that is like, once again, so with my global index funds, they've been built up since 2017. With my crypto, that's been built up since about 2020. So both of them have been invested into monthly for years and years now. And to be honest with you, that's the approach I'll probably follow for at least the next 2 decades minimum, probably always, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's my, I guess, an insight into my investing portfolio at the moment as of end of April 2025. If it crashes or it booms, it could change very quickly, but that's it right now.
Awesome. That's amazing. And just to give guys an idea of, because obviously what you said, like around 140k, a lot of that is, what you've put in, and then there's a chunk of that which is, the interest and what your gains. How much of that would you say is like how much you've actually had to put in month by month, like the total of that? Just really rough, just to give an idea.
Greg, I've got the exact numbers, mate. I don't mess around. I've got it to the penny.
Not messing about.
So my cost basis is £102,826.77.
Sheesh.
But it doesn't tell the full story because in that cost basis is what I call some free money. So some of it is free money from my employer. I used to get employer matched workplace pensions. Some of that is also affiliate shares that I get if someone signs up using my Trading 212 link, for example. Some of that is free money I've got from the government because I've also got a stocks and shares lifetime ISA, another UK account, although that account is very small. But long story short, what that then means is my actual, I guess, like my actual cash investment out of my own pocket, if that makes sense, I've tried to like do a rough back of the envelope calculation in my spreadsheet, and it's essentially around £90,000. So on my own money, I've invested about £90,000. That's over the last 8 years. And pretty much all of that money has just mainly come from probably most of that money's come from my 9 to 5 income, to be honest with you, just working as a chartered accountant over the last years and years. So the other like 12 to 13 grand is then sort of free money that I've got through like affiliate shares or pension contributions, whatever it is. So then, because my portfolio values about 140,000 at the moment, 140 to 60.54, there's been about 38,000 pounds of like capital gains or growth over that period. Once again, though, it's worth pointing out, just a few months ago, my cost basis was actually lower, like 5 grand lower probably, and my gains was like 15 grand higher. So it can be very volatile. So I almost don't really try and
ups and
downs.
downs.
The only thing in my control is actually my cost basis, my own contributions. So all I do is try and invest as much as possible every single month through my income. The growth or like the compound interest does fluctuate like mad. And yeah, we made this like 3 or 4 months ago. The growth would have been like 55k, would have been bouncing. But now, because obviously global funds and everything's had a bad time recently because of the tariffs, it has changed. But yeah, essentially, long story short, about 140k market value, 102k cost, of which about 90k is my own money, which then leaves me with about 37.5k of capital gains over the last 7 or 8 years.
That's amazing. So I think that's a good picture to show anyone listening who's in sort of interested in investing is you've put in 90, and obviously it's hard work to get there, but then using the market, 40 odd K of that is from the gains from the market, and your money working for you. So
yeah,
that's a great picture to tell.
Yeah, and I think this, in my opinion, is an actual realistic view of investing. I feel that a lot of the stuff you see online is just bullshit, and it's like people trying to sell FX courses with like a Lambo, and it's all just bullshit, to be honest with you. I feel like this is actually a realistic view of investing. Like the gains haven't been life-changing. It's like a lot of money, don't get me wrong, about 35, 40k, but it's not like I'm a millionaire from 8 years of investing. It's still very slow and steady. But I mean, it was last year, actually, I've actually got the numbers. Let me quickly find it, because I also work out my capital gains each year. But last year, my capital growth was about £32,000, the gains from the market. And that's because the global stock markets were up about 25%, 25%, and crypto also had a good year, and that's a small part of my portfolio. This year, I'm at a big capital loss. So this year, I'm actually down about 15 grand. So it shows you how volatile it can be. But I think it shows a realistic view of investing, because it's slow and steady to get to this point. But also, and you've probably heard this before, the first 100k is the hardest. Once you do get to that 100k mark, when there is good years, like there was last year, I got to 100k for context in about February 2024. And then because I had that big pot, when there was a really good year for the market last year, I made a huge amount of gains, which I think, and that's why I said earlier on, the most important thing really is just your contributions and putting in what you can. And then whatever the market returns is going to return. Last year was a great year. This year's a bad year so far. It's out of our control. But just investing what you can is the most important thing. And hopefully these numbers over the last 8 years show a sort of realistic view of actually being a long-term investor, and not like not a lot of the rubbish that you see online is just fake.
Not the Lambo culture.
Yeah, it's bad.
No, I love it. And just you're speaking my language is pretty much similar to what I do. I'm the sort of set it and forget it, pretty much 100% in index funds, nice. ETFs. But it's interesting because you could kind of see where people's like where they were influenced by when they're on their sort of investing journey. Like, for example, if they tell you like these are the investments I'm in, you kind of see like he's probably read that, or he or she's probably read this book or that book. Like, for example, like for me, you'd probably think, oh, he's a J.L. Collins Simple Path to Wealth type. Like, it's obvious, not just one fund. It is. Or if you've got like 2 or 3 like different indexes, you might say, oh, Boggleheads or whatever. What is it for you, Ryan? Who were your influences when you started? What were the books you were reading that kind of like flicked the switch for you? And
Yeah, probably the main one was Boggle, to be honest with you. And I think the Little Book of Common Sense Investing was a very powerful book. I think, to be honest with you, that combined with just like a lot of Reddit reading on the UK personal finance subreddit, and also a lot of YouTube videos, combined with reading, books on like what else? I mean, the first book I read, pretty typical, was Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was in 2017, I think. Then there was just like, I'll teach you to be rich, The Psychology of Money, The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, The Simple Path to Wealth, all those sort of books that everyone's read when it comes to, and a lot of them do sort of say similar things, I guess. But yeah, just sort of got, because I actually made a lot of mistakes when I first started investing. So I initially was picking individual stocks and trying to trade them. I had no idea what an index fund was when in my first year of investing. I didn't realize they existed. I thought you had to just buy individual companies like the Wolf of Wall Street and look at charts all day. But fortunately, I eventually did stumble across index funds. But I was buying and selling individual stocks, paying loads of fees. I was paying like really high commissions because I also was using my bank, the company I current accounted with, as the investment platform, and they had really high fees. I didn't know dedicated investment platforms existed. I was also doing all of this through a general investment account. Once again, I didn't know a stocks and shares ISA existed. So I made a load of mistakes my first sort of 3 to 12 months of investing. But then I eventually discovered Vanguard, discovered stocks and shares ISAs, discovered index funds. And then I guess since I've sort of got, in this account of approach I sort of outlined, it probably took me a good year of making mistakes to get it locked in. And luckily, when I was making those mistakes, it was only with hundreds of pounds, not thousands or now tens of thousands of pounds. So it was on very small amounts of money, which is, I think, why it's good to actually start with a small amount, because you can make the mistakes with a small amount. But yeah, it was probably about a year afterwards I finally settled on this approach, and it's now what I've really followed since probably like mid 2018. So for about 7 or so years now.
Amazing. And it's funny when you first start reading about investing and stuff, and you're choosing like which index funds and things like that. It's funny how you get bogged down and you get all these spreadsheets and you're like comparing one against the other, and it's like, if I could use this one, I could get this like 0.02 like a better return, and you go really into the weeds. But I think it's the fact if people are like doing what you're saying, putting a decent sort of savings rate every month and putting the money away and investing it into something with low cost. I think just that general action of just doing those things, and you could kind of just tweak it along the way, but as long as they're actually doing it, because it's just, I know it's hard for people to kind of, it sounds like really simple, but it's actually quite difficult for people because of the sort of psychological side, and there's a lot out there, and I think you mentioned it before, there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, no, definitely. The thing with investing in the stock market is it's not like a mortgage, so you're not necessarily locked in. You can change platforms very easily. You can change what funds you're invested into very easily. So in most cases, you're not locked in. So you're definitely right. The best thing to do is just start with whatever you've got. And that's why it's probably good starting small, because as you learn more, you can adapt and tweak your strategy, which is what I've done myself. As I learned about low-cost platforms and tax-advantaged accounts like ISAs and pensions and global index funds and ETFs, you sort of then, tweak and simplify your approach, in my case, to be honest with you. But yeah, the most important thing is definitely getting started. And I think, we'll probably run through later on the 3-step blueprint that I try and teach to start investing, and hopefully that'll make it very simple for people. But yeah, the beauty of it is you can always change what you're doing. So the most important thing is to get started. I think particularly, as you say, when it comes to choosing a fund, it's actually probably the most difficult decision, I think, because a lot of the names are stupid and they have mad jargon in their names.
All the abbreviations and acronyms.
Yeah. But also there's just thousands and thousands available. So it is hard to break down. But I think my approach really is just to find the lowest, most globally diversified fund. That's all I do in literally every investing account that I've got. That's my personal approach. Some people might want US funds or different funds, but I like to keep my approach as simple, as passive, as diversified as possible. And that's why in all my sort of 4 key investing accounts that I went through earlier on, I just hold one global fund in each of them.
Awesome. Just speaking about like long-term goals for you, I think I heard you mention that you don't actually have like a target. Like, you know how we in the FI community, they're like, oh, what's your stash maths? What's your FI target number?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned you don't actually have one. Is that still the case, or?
Yeah, partly. I actually made a YouTube video recently on my sort of 30-year investing plan, and in there I did go through how I want to try and get to £1 million invested, just because by using the 4% rule, I can then draw down £40,000 per year, and that should cover my expenses essentially. But at the same point, I don't massively have a specific number in mind. I think, to be honest with you, if I could make money simple a full-time job and earn money from that, and then I guess if I could do that, I wouldn't necessarily care about investing as much because I was doing the job I enjoy, if that makes sense. But if I'm stuck in the sort of 9 to 5 corporate ladder rat race type stuff, then I guess it would become, as I get older, more of a focus to just increase my salary, invest more and more, so I can then stop working years earlier. So there's probably two approaches. And I think if I stay in this 9 to 5 role, I probably would try and get to that, hopefully £1 million within the next 20, 25 years, so I can retire early before pension access age and use my ISA to bridge the gap to pension age, then live off my pension, and then that'll then get me through to the state pension, if that's still around. That's what I run through in my YouTube video. But if I can make money simple a full-time job, then I think it's probably less pressure to do that because I'll have a job that I enjoy. So if I only make half the money now, it'll be fine, if that makes sense. But yeah, so I sort of have a goal, but also it might change. So half in, half out.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really good point you made, because when all of the sort of financial independence FIRE movement came around, it was because, you know, people wanted something different from the 9 to 5 and they were burnt out. So like, how can I get to retire earlier, like in 10 years, 15 years? So, you know, the goal was to do something you enjoy doing. And I think, as you mentioned, you know, if you're doing, you know, the content creation stuff, that, you know, that's tick that box and you'd be happy. Yeah. That's a really good point, because we get focused on this number. We're like, oh yeah, we need to get to this point, but actually it's that lifestyle. And actually, just a slight sort of connected thing to talking about that and lifestyle and that kind of thing is, so this podcast is about, before getting to financial independence, is like enjoying your life before then, finding that sort of freedom and alternative FI paths. So I'm just curious, on your journey then, 7-8 years of investing, what kind of freedoms has unlocked for you on your journey, being doing this saving and investing, and, you know, what freedoms or what things has it opened up for yourself?
I guess through my investments, because I guess it's not enough to live off of yet, and I've not actually accessed the money yet. I've probably not really got any extra freedoms from them yet. I will one day, obviously, when I start to live off them. But I guess my sort of, what I try and do is prioritize investing and invest every single month, but I also spend money like every month on doing fun stuff. So it's like, I mean, in Melbourne, it's like going to the Australian Open, going to the F1, going to AFL games, doing the odd night out, although I have been trying to cut back on my drinking, you know, getting the odd coffee, takeaway, whatever it is, all sort of normal stuff. But I do think there is a bit of a dark side of FIRE, where people are investing like 50 to 70% of their income, like never going outside, never spending a penny. And I'm just like, mate, that's too far for me. I actually read a really good book recently called Die with Zero, and it makes a really good, strong case about actually spending your money, particularly in your 20s and 30s and 40s, because your health is never going to be better. Although you'll have more money, what's the point in having like 2 mil when you're 70 and you've got no mobility? So I think I sort of already did it a bit, but now I'm even more inclined to actually still prioritize investing and invest what I can each month, but actually spend money on stuff that I enjoy doing today whilst I'm like in Australia and got my health and all that sort of stuff. So it is a balancing act. And whilst I think that I've not got any freedoms yet from my investment portfolio, I will one day. And in the meantime, whilst I'm still building that, I do try and enjoy my life from day to day and have like something fun to look forward to every month, whether it's like a big cycle or like a weekend away, or even just going to like some sort of sports fixture.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant point that you made, is why you're on that journey, is to balance saving and being frugal, but also enjoying and spending what you can. Because that book, actually, even for us, that was a really pivotal book. It made us go on another like sabbatical. Me and the missus were like, okay, well, because obviously I'm much older than yourself, so reading that book was like, hold on, maybe we need to spend a bit.
Yeah, and that's why I think I might do a sabbatical, because at some point later this year, just because I've sort of been like straight from like school to uni to working in London to working in Australia, and whilst I do go on holidays, I've not done like a proper year traveling, so that might be on the cards at some point soon. So yeah, maybe if we do another podcast in a year or two, I can talk you through what I did.
Awesome, yeah. Actually, no, that's a good point you made. Actually, just talking about you, even just thinking about sabbatical, I think the thing about having that amount of savings, it gives you confidence to take small risks. Like for example, has that been the case for you? Or
yeah, no, I think so. Because one of the things that I was reading in the book was actually in Die with Zero was how the guy was saying, the author, one of his like roommates in New York went on some like month trip to Europe when he was 18, and he put it on a credit card and he had no idea how he was going to pay it back, but he just did it. And now, like looking back 10 years later, it was like the best thing he ever did. He was so young, he didn't really care, and all that sort of stuff. And as I approach 30, I'm thinking, like, I'm not going to want to backpack probably when I'm like 35 or 40. I might not want to sleep in like hostels. So whilst I'm still a bit younger and got less responsibilities, I need to start doing more stuff essentially. So yeah, that was really one of the powerful stories from the book. And I did sort of look back and think, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe like when I was in London, for those years as like a graduate, I should have just spent more money rather than invested it. But then, as you sort of say, if I had done that, now I wouldn't have as much money invested. And now I've got that amount of money invested, I probably can afford to take more time off work because that's still going to grow in the background. It's a whole like catch-22 thing, isn't it? There's no like perfect the perfect outcome is just have really, really rich parents and then you can do whatever you want. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me. So it is, and that's not the case for most people. So it is a bit of a balancing act between, trying to like live today, not regret the past, and like, I guess, build for the future. And it is hard juggling it all. I think particularly in your 20s and 30s, because like, I've got some mates getting married, having kids, buying houses, buying second houses. I've not got any of that. But I've got other mates that are still just like fobbing around, not doing much, that are traveling all the time, that are always on holiday, that are like bodybuilding on steroids. It's just like, it's mental. So many people do so many things, and then it's quite easy to compare and think, oh, maybe I should do that, or maybe I should do this. So I mean, it's one of those things where there's no point, like in my case, I guess, regretting what I've done in the past, maybe not spending enough and investing too much, and just trying to make positive changes going forward, if that makes sense, which is why I think that I'm going to try and do a sabbatical at some point in between finishing work in Australia and moving back to the UK. And then I guess after that, I'll suss out what I'm doing next.
Yeah, that's the thing. All right. So I wanted to go into your book. And well done, by the way, for getting the book out there. There you go. There it is. Was it released late? Is it last year? Is that right?
Yeah, November 2024. So it's been out for a few months now.
So before we jump into that, like, why did you write the book? How did it come about? What's the backstory to it? Because it's not obviously something not normally people do. So it's amazing that you've done it.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I originally wrote a free ebook in 2020. At the start, January 2020, it got thousands and thousands of downloads. I then wrote a paid ebook in 2021. I think it was October 2021, which was actually called Stop Waiting, Start Investing, which sort of just went through really like the beginner's basic stuff to invest in, and then the 3-step blueprint that I teach to actually start investing. And then this came about. I actually met someone in Australia who knew a book publisher. They put me in contact with them. The Australian publisher didn't want to publish it, but knew an English publisher, so they put me in contact with them. And then Harriman House, the UK publisher, luckily took it on and then published it for me. So that was sort of how it came about. So that's probably actually one benefit of moving to Australia. It inadvertently helped me get the book published.
Wow.
But it was originally, I guess, the sort of outline of the book was there from the free ebook that I wrote in 2021, which I think is probably why the publisher didn't mind taking it on, because I sort of had a lot of the content there already. It wasn't like it was from scratch, but it is much improved, much refined, just much better than the one I wrote in 2021. When I wrote it in 2021, it was in my like room when I was renting in Stratford during lockdown. It was very much like cowboy style, just not very coherent, loads of little random graphics everywhere. Whereas this is a bit more of like a professional job that you can go and buy in Waterstones or from Amazon or something. But yeah, it was just really to try and get it all down on paper. And I sort of wanted to have one place where someone from the UK could just learn every single thing they need to know about investing, and also the simplest possible way. Because even a lot of the books that I've mentioned earlier on and I've read myself, they're all very Americanized and they're from American authors. So I wanted like a UK equivalent of sort of like the simplest way to actually start investing and build your wealth. And that's sort of where it originally came about, with the free ebook and then the paid ebook and then eventually the published physical book. So it was sort of many years in the making. But yeah, that's sort of what it is. And that's why I guess I wanted to get it out there.
Amazing. And did you have any challenges trying to get the book out, or was it pretty smooth sailing?
It was all smooth sailing, to be fair. It is surprising how early on you need to like get it all done though. You got to almost do it like 6 to 12 months in advance, like the blurb, the cover, like they start promoting it to people who are going to sell it, even getting the script done. A lot of it has to get done very early. So I think I actually signed like the book deal with the publisher like maybe 20 months before the book actually came out. I feel like it was in like March 2023 and it came out in November 2024. So it's a big sort of gap. I guess luckily for me, I knew what I wanted to write about, and I had a lot of sort of backbone or had sort of outline of the chapters there already. So I wasn't doing it all from scratch. But yeah, it meant that for like 6 months or so, it was just a big ongoing job, which obviously I was in Australia at the time. So sort of trying to juggle it all, having calls with like the publisher and the editor, with like the marketing team. There was a lot of sort of stuff going on. But obviously, yeah, I'm absolutely chuffed to have it out. And yeah, it's brilliant that people can just get it and then just hopefully. And one great thing about it is I get messages most weeks about someone getting it or their friend getting it and they've started investing. And that's really the best thing to hear, because that's sort of the main purpose of the whole book. So yeah, I'm obviously chuffed to have it out. So but that's sort of a bit about how the process worked. And luckily, to be honest with you, there wasn't really any stumbling blocks at all. And I was actually in the UK. I went back November last year for 2 weeks for the book launch and done a few podcasts, went to the publisher's office, had a little celebration, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was a good way to, I guess, yeah, get it out there. And it was sort of like a weight off the shoulders as well, because now it's done, it's out there. I can just do something else for a bit.
Nice way to end the year as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's how I was actually advertising it. I was like, it's the perfect stocking filler for anyone who's looking to start investing.
Nice. So, all right. So if someone's listening to this and they're on the fence about investing, and I was wondering if we could use your book as a bit of a framework for them, if you don't mind sharing bits. And I know you mentioned before it's sort of split into 3 parts. So yeah. Give me a name, someone that you know in UK. I just want to use their name as a reference for this sort of little exercise we're going to do. So someone that you know, just use a name.
Tommy,
all right. Say Tommy. And how old is Tommy, roughly?
45.
Okay.
Or do you want someone young? 25.
All right, Tommy, 25. I don't know, lives in, you mentioned Stratford earlier, so let's say Stratford, on the fence about investing. Let's use your book as a framework, like as a step-by-step. Just talk Tommy through how he's going to do, get himself started investing, similar to what you're doing, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. So first thing Tom needs to do, big man Tommy, part 1 of the book of 3 is called The Foundations. So it's really, and I think it just helps to actually understand a little bit about like what investing is, why you should invest, why you haven't started investing yet, all of those bits before you actually start investing. So I guess to run through high level a few bits in the book. So why would you start investing? Ultimately, because it will grow your money. And unfortunately, unless you've got rich parents, no one is going to save you. Employee pensions are much less lucrative. Government support is hardly available. Family and friends might not be able to support you. So it's sort of on yourself to be able to invest. And it's obviously worth pointing out, if you are able to invest, it is a privilege, because it means you're in a developed country and you've got disposable income. But if you have that privilege, then you definitely need to take advantage of it. And I guess selfishly as well, if you don't invest, you're literally always going to work. And you're going to be relying on a state pension, which I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's definitely not going to be around when I get there in 40 years' time. It probably won't be there in like 20 or 30 years' time, I don't think. So that's sort of why you need to invest. I guess what actually is investing is literally where you sort of give up money today to put it to work to grow your money. So with your money, you can either save it, which is great, but of course that loses out to inflation, although we do need to save for some goals. You can spend it, which is also great. And I think that's brilliant now after reading Die with Zero. And it is brilliant to spend your money on stuff you enjoy, as long as it's not just random crap that you're buying for the sake of it because of social media. But the third option and the way to actually grow your wealth is through investing, to actually build and grow and compound your wealth over the long term. So that's sort of some of the basics. I think one probably quite important part that I go through in chapter 2 is some sort of common misconceptions on why people haven't started investing yet. And we're sort of covered on, I think maybe glossed over a couple already. But for example, reason one, I say you don't have any money, which is a massive misconception now because you can get started with such a small amount of money. I myself started with £100 many years ago, but now there's even more investment platforms available where you can start with just a few pounds. Number two is you're scared or you're nervous, which once again is a very common sort of thing to hear, and it is understandable. But ultimately, anything you do that's new is going to be quite nerve-wracking, particularly when it comes to your money. So I think just starting small, dipping your toe in, getting over that mental hurdle is just the most important thing to do. There's then 5 other reasons that I go through on, there's too much choice, you've heard a bad story, stuff about a big crash, all these reasons why people think they shouldn't start investing. And I think one of the big ones is there's so much choice, as we talked about with the funds. There's thousands of different funds. But yeah, in the book, when we get onto part 3 of 3, the 3-step blueprint, I go through just only one fund you need to invest into to grow your wealth. But yeah, that's probably some of the basics that I would talk Tommy through when it comes to laying the foundations, as I call it, to sort of build that investor mindset. And probably chapter 4, which is the last chapter in part 1, is about compound interest, which is it's the biggest chapter in the book. It's 31 pages on it, because I think it's the most important concept when it comes to investing, but also the most misunderstood concept. And there's loads of examples, loads of FAQs, but ultimately it's simply where your money just earns interest on interest. But what that actually means when it comes to investing is when your gains earn previous gains. So if you make a gain of £1,000 in the market this year, you might be tempted to withdraw it and then spend it. But by leaving that invested, as the market continues to grow over the years, over the long term, your contributions are growing, but all the gains you've made are also growing. And that is sort of the compounding effect in action. And I think it is misunderstood, but trying to actually, and it can feel a bit sort of imaginary and wizardry, compound interest, but I would definitely recommend using a compound interest calculator online. I use one called the Calculator site, and you can just see how powerful compound interest really is to grow your wealth. And that then is the foundations, the brickwork laid for Tommy. So now he knows everything that he needs to know before we get into how the stock market actually works, and then the 3 steps to actually start investing.
Yeah, and those are so important. Because you do need to have that background knowledge, because you need to understand that, because when you get into your the part 3, when you start investing, and as you said, the markets, it's volatile. You need to have like a good understanding of what you're doing, what the market is about. There's volatility, but generally, and obviously we can only know from what we've seen in the past, it does go up over time. And when you do have dips, sometimes dips are like it's like bargains, isn't it? You can look at them as like, so there's 2 ways to look at it. It's like you could look at it the media way, which is like, oh my gosh, panic. this is panic, this is mad, this is not work, this is not good. Or you could look at it like, oh, it's a little bargain, little bargain. You could invest more, and the units are cheaper. So yeah, 100%. So it's good to have that, giving Tommy a good foundation.
Yeah, so then part 2 is the investing world, and that's really on how the stock market is actually made up. I think that a lot of people just think it's like imaginary numbers and like charts on a screen, but obviously every stock is an actual company which has potentially thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employees. They probably make goods and services all over the world. they've got offices, they've got stores, they've got customers, they've got suppliers. So it's sort of probably understanding a little bit about how the stock market actually works. But then most importantly, these companies can then be grouped together into index funds. And that is sort of the preferred way. And in my opinion, the best way to invest using low cost index funds and low cost ETFs. So this part here, and what I probably go through with Tommy, really is the importance of index funds, what they are, essentially being a basket of companies. And my preferred approach, as we've ran through already, is global index funds. So I'm as globally diversified as possible. And the reason why that's so good is because important concepts being diversification, but also it's impossible to beat the market over the long term. Warren Buffett has done it, and I think people hang on to that. Unfortunately, sorry to be a downer, you're probably not Warren Buffett to anyone listening. If you are, you probably won't listen to this podcast, is the fact. You'll probably be out there buying undervalued companies and making billions of dollars like him. He's sitting on like $300 billion worth of cash at the moment. But yeah, I sort of go through a lot of the data on just why active investing through active funds and individual stock picking is so difficult. So that then settles on the index funds and passive investing. And then the final part, actually, final chapter for part 2, then goes on to money psychology. And to be honest with you, I've only got one chapter on this because I think the best book on money psychology is A Psychology of Money. But I run through probably the most important points when it comes to a money mindset point of view. And that then wraps up part 2 before we get into the actual 3-step blueprint. So I think now, for anyone listening who's maybe read the book, or hypothetically for Tommy, he's obviously laid the foundations. He understands how the investing world works, being index funds and active funds, being passive investing versus active investing, being diversification, cost averaging, and in money psychology. And that's then sort of got, I guess, the total basics ready to then get into the actual 3 steps to properly start investing.
Awesome. And just before we even jump into that third bit, I remember when I first started, I was like, as you said, listening to different podcasts here and there, reading blog articles here and there, but you've got this all in one little book, and this is an awesome book to have just you saying just the first 2 parts before we even jump into the juicy part 3. So nice one.
Yeah, so part 3. So this is something I've been probably teaching, and I don't know when I first came up with it, but it would have been before, probably would have been maybe like 2019. When I wrote my first free ebook, I ran through these 3 steps. My very first ever YouTube video in January 2020 was like a portfolio video update, and also these 3 steps. And I think it just simply breaks it down into 3 simple steps to start investing. So what they are is platform, account, investment. So to then expand on those a little bit, step 1 is choose a low fee platform. Step 2 is open a tax advantaged account. And step 3 is invest into a global fund. So I appreciate there's a little bit of jargon in there. So let me unpack it again at a bit of a deeper level. So step 1 is choose a low fee platform. A platform could also be called an app, a broker. It's essentially just a website or an app you're going to use to invest. So I use Vanguard UK quite a lot, but other 2 platforms I'm a big fan of in the UK are Trading 212 and Invest Engine. In the UK, there are a lot of platforms out there. There's actually too many, to be honest with you, which once again makes it difficult. The beauty of it is you can have multiple platforms. If you want to, you can download 10 different platforms, 10 different apps, try them all out, see which one you prefer. But I think when it comes to choosing the platform, the most important things are really, number 1, the fees. The lower the fees, the better. Number 2, their reputation. The bigger they are, the better. The longer they've been around for, the better. If it's like this isn't too bad of stock market platforms. It's more sort of crypto platforms, all these shady, dodgy platforms. With the stock market, there's a lot of like FCA regulation, FSCS protection. So you want to make sure they're a legit platform. And if it is a big platform, Vanguard, Trading 212, Invest Engine, AJ Bell, Hargreaves Lansdown, Interactive Investor. There's so many, but good reputation. And then step 3, probably most importantly, or not most importantly, but of equal importance, is make sure it has the accounts, step 2, and the investments, step 3, that you actually want. So what I try and say to people is, what accounts do you want to use and what investments do you actually want to make? and then you can work backwards to figure out the best platform for your situation. I think in probably 9 out of 10 cases, either Vanguard, Trading 212 or Invest Engine is probably going to be best for most people. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, step one is choosing a low fee platform. And if you want to use it as an analogy of sort of like food shopping, this is probably the like supermarket you're going to go to. Some people only shop at Sainsbury's. Some people might get some bits from Sainsbury's, some bits from Tesco's, some bits from Aldi. You can go to one supermarket or multiple supermarkets, and it's the same when choosing investing platforms. Step two is then open a tax advantaged account. So this is actually the simplest step, because in the UK, we essentially have 2 accounts with tax advantages. One of them is a stocks and shares ISA, and one of them is a pension. A pension could be a workplace pension or a personal pension, which is called a SIP. So for most people, again, I personally think a combination of both of those accounts is going to be the best. And that's personally what I have, a stocks and shares ISA and a pension. The reason being is that stocks and shares ISAs grow tax-free forever, and you can access them whenever, which is great. Whereas pensions, you get tax relief, so you avoid tax, which is particularly lucrative at higher rates of income. And if you're an employee, you can get an employer match, free money from your employer, what I was touching on earlier on my own portfolio. And then that money can then compound for decades to come, with the main sort of downside being it's locked up until you're 55. That's the current age. But I think having one, or for most people, both of those accounts is probably going to be the best way to go about it, because they're almost exactly opposite in how they work, but they both have massive tax advantages. And for most people, just contributing monthly to both of those is probably the best way to go. Step three, the most difficult one, is then choosing the actual investment. And my preferred approach is investing into a low-cost global fund. There are thousands of individual stocks. There are thousands of funds. There are thousands of ETFs. But I try and keep my approach as simple as possible by just using one global index fund. So in the UK, that is mainly a fund called the FTSE Global All Cap, which once again is a stupid name. All the names are stupid. They make no sense. But essentially, what that fund does, it invests into 7,000 companies all around the world. So it really is as globally diversified as I can be. If I wanted to, I could also invest into an S&P 500 fund, a AI fund, a NASDAQ fund, a FTSE 100 fund, an emerging markets fund. But the whole point is that one global fund has every stock around the world in it already. So I don't need multiple funds, and it keeps my approach as diversified and as simple as possible. And that is step three. Step three is probably where there's the most choice. If you want to, you can, have 80% of your money in global funds and 20% in individual stocks. You can have 50% in a global fund and 50% in an S&P 500 fund, which is what a lot of people that follow me do. It's completely up to you. It's your money. You can invest it how you like. But this, in my opinion, is just the best and simplest approach to follow. And if you do it, follow these sort of 3 steps, you're going to have low fees, low taxes, and a diversified global fund that will grow as the global stock market grows. So in the book, I mean, there's I don't even know how many, there's probably 70 pages that goes into a lot of other considerations. There's a lot of data and charts and stats on why index funds are the best, and specifically global index funds are the best. But hopefully that gives a little flavour on, choosing the 3 steps to invest. And I appreciate, once again, I've given sort of probably a lot of information there. So really, if people want specific stuff to look into, step 1, low fee platform, look into Vanguard, Trading 212 and Invest Engine as a first port of call. Step 2, choosing an account, look into a stocks and shares ISA and a pension. The chances are, if you're listening and you're working a 9-to-5 job, you've already got a workplace pension. So you need to get the login details, see how much you have, see what your money's being invested into. And if you don't like the fund, or you don't understand it, look into it and switch it. And if that's the case, then you can probably just also open up a stocks and shares ISA on the side and have money going into both of those each month. And then step 3 is then choosing the investment. And as I say, in my own workplace pensions, my own investing accounts, I just use one global fund, and that gives me global diversification for a low fee. And that's all I need to do to grow my wealth. And I like that approach as well, because it just takes all guesswork out of it. I'm not betting on just the S&P 500, which is only 500 companies, and betting on one government and one currency and one economy. I'm not only betting on Tesla and one individual stock. I'm not betting on only the AI market and the semiconductor market. I've literally got every industry, every company, every country in there, and the global fund will grow as the global stock market grows, and then my wealth will grow alongside that. So that's sort of the thinking behind the 3-step blueprint, and that's how I follow it myself. So hopefully that gives people a bit of a specific path they can look into, do their own research, and then pick the best 3 steps for them.
That is amazing. You've made that so simple and clear
Thank you.
For people to take on board. I think that's really awesome. And maybe the next question that people might be thinking is, okay, so I've set this up. So how much would I need to be putting aside? I know that we talked before about sort of savings rates, and I think, in the FIRE community, they're sort of 40 plus, 50, 60 plus of a savings rate, i.e. how much of your the percentage of your income to set aside for investing on a monthly basis if you're doing the sort of dollar cost averaging type thing. Is there any sort of guidance on that, or is it what you can initially? I know you mentioned just starting small to begin with, just to kind of get your feet wet. Any sort of tips around the amount to set aside?
Yes, of course. The more you can start with, the quicker you can build your portfolio. And if you are in a fortunate position where you have a really high salary or low expenses or both, you might be able to invest loads and just grow your portfolio really quickly, because the most important thing really is just getting money invested and using your own contributions to build your pot, particularly in the early years. But I normally say to people, either aim for £100 per month or 10% of your income per month. I think they're good starting points, because it's a specific number they can aim for. Or if it's less than that is completely fine as well. I think a lot of it is just starting small, making it a habit, getting used to the volatility of the stock market and the short-term uncertainty. So that's why I think starting small is actually a good thing, particularly for newer investors, maybe if they're nervous or feeling a bit daunted by it. So I would say probably £100 a month, which is what I started with, or 10% of your income, because they're both decent amounts that you can start to get used to it. And then as you get more confident, and as you probably then get addicted to investing, you'll start trying to invest more and more per month.
Yeah, I like that approach. Start small and then just build up from there, because as you said, it can, it's daunting to, if someone was told, oh yeah, half of your income you need to put in investment, they're like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So Agreed. Yeah, it's good to start small. Cool, nice one, Ryan. Thank you for that, and I appreciate you sharing the tips in your book.
Yeah, no problem. Because actually, to be honest with you, that probably step 4 though, if I was going to add one, as you probably sort of alluded to, is then actually like starting and also automating it. I do actually talk about automation a bit in the book, but I think when it comes to your investing, if you can just automate it, it's the best thing to do. Because the chances are, if you leave it up to yourself to do it manually, you might not do it, because you might think, oh, the market's up, it's going to come down. Oh, the market's come down, it's going to drop again. No one knows what's going to happen to the market, ever. If anyone could have timed the market and predict it, they wouldn't tell anyone, and they would just make literally billions of pounds doing it, to be honest with you. So that's why the best thing is just, whether you do choose, say, £100 a month, £500 a month, just automate it. So that's happening every single month. And then all you need to do, and all I do personally, is I normally try and increase my monthly investments each year if my salary increases. And if I come into any lump sums, which is normally like getting an annual tax return maybe, or getting an annual bonus or whatever it is, then I once again just invest it as a lump sum. So that's my personal approach. So everything's done automatically, and the only reasons I really log in is to either increase the automatic investment or make a lump sum. And other than that, I know everything's an autopilot. I haven't got to touch it. And to be honest with you, the sort of best tip really is just automate it and then forget about it. You might have seen, but many years ago, Fidelity done this study where they found out that their best investors were all either inactive or dead, because they hadn't been able to literally fiddle with their portfolio and mess it up. So just pick an approach and stick with it rather than fiddling with it, because the chances are the more you buy and sell, the more you try and predict and time things, the less returns you'll get.
Yeah, amazing. And it's that pay yourself first thing, isn't it? That's the key, isn't it? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, the way that I actually try and say it is tax yourself first, because it's the best tax you'll ever pay.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, Ryan. So thank you for that. Before we wrap up and go through any of your plugs and anything about your platform, I'm going to go through a quick rapid fire segment, rapid fire question segment. So I've got 5 questions. 5 questions. Just keep your answers brief and short. If okay with you, I'll start with the first one.
Yeah, fire away.
All right. Question number 1 is, what's something you wish you'd done 10 years ago?
Start investing. No,
I'll set you up.
Yeah, I started 8 years ago, so not too far away. I'd probably say got properly into the gym and running more. I've got into it more recently,
Okay.
but ultimately your health is your wealth, and the fitter you are, and I feel like the better you look, the more confident you're going to be, but also the healthier you are and the more you can actually enjoy your wealth as you get older.
Nice. And I think you mentioned you've done some marathons, is that right?
Yeah, I've done a couple last year. Yeah, I started running about
Nice.
18 months ago, and I sort of tried to get straight into it. I'm still not very quick, but I'm building it up slowly.
I like that one. Question number 2. What are 1 or 2 daily habits that have helped you on your journey?
One recently is actually waking up early. I was never a morning person ever, but I think I have slowly become one the last 6 to 12 months, and it just helps me like get some stuff done in the morning, even if it's like a morning run or like a morning gym session. It means it's out of the way for the day, or even just waking up and doing some stuff and making money simple. So that, and another thing I've done recently is like started taking electrolytes every day, and I think it's helping. So they're probably the 2 things I'd say.
Yeah, nice, good ones. Question number 3. Your most important lesson in life. Most important lesson in life.
Stop waiting to start investing compound interest. To be honest with you, yeah, I mean, I probably would say, obviously, start investing as young as possible, but also enjoy yourself as young as possible, because there's no point saving like 50 to 70% of your income only to start enjoying it when you're like 60 and old and you can't do much anymore. So I would say start investing early, but also start enjoying your life day to day early, because otherwise, what's the point?
Love it. Question number 4, and you might have mentioned some of these earlier, but 2 or 3 transformational book recommendations that you could provide to the listeners.
Yeah, so I'd probably say my 3 favourite investing books are The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, The Psychology of Money, and The Simple Path to Wealth. But a couple of good books I've read this year, so as we mentioned already, Die with Zero. Another one I've got there is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, which is a very good book about sort of, it ultimately is like a book that says start to meditate, but it's just a good sciencey sort of book. Another good book which I've not read for a while, but I've read a couple of times, is like the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, or probably pronounced that wrong.
Naval Ravikant or something. Yeah.
That's a good book. I'm trying to look around and see what I've got in. I've got so many books everywhere. That's probably the first ones
under
that come
the carpet
to mind.
and
And then obviously shameless plug for Stop Waiting to Start Investing, new edition.
Hey. Of course. Nice. And then just the last one, question number 5. So what's 1 or 2 small things anyone listening can do like this week if they wanted to start kind of get on to what you're doing at the moment? What's 1 or 2 simple things they could do?
Number 1, if you've got a workplace pension, look into it. Get the login details. It'll probably be your biggest and most important investment account, particularly if you're going to be working for most of your life, which you probably are. So get the login details from HR or from the provider. Understand how much you have, what fees you're paying. Whenever I do run like courses or coaching stuff, it's always, no one ever knows. And some people have like multiple 6 figures in them because they've been working for like 20 years. And I'm like, if you made a few little tweaks years ago, you could have like double or triple. This is a tangent, but with my own investment portfolio, my workplace pension, I was auto-enrolled into a fund. Over the last 5 years, it's returned 11%. Bearing in mind how well the global stock market has done, my own fund that I then switched to had returned like 76%. So it was 6 or 7 times more. And I know loads of mates from work that had never bothered to change, even though I told them to in 2019 when we started working. And it's like, it's just heartbreaking, honestly. It's gutting. That's why I always bang on about workplace pensions. People need to look into them. So that'd be the first one. And the second thing would be to start tracking your contributions per month and also your investing pots per month. Because I think for me, I've been tracking religiously how much I contribute every single month to my different investing pots, like ISA, pension, crypto, whatever it is, and also tracking the actual value of those pots. And then it's motivating to see over time how those pots are growing, how you're investing more and more, and then you're more likely to stick with it. So that's probably the two things I'd say you can do within an hour this week, and just get them set up and then start tracking it all.
Lovely. Yeah, really, really good ones there. Okay, yeah, thanks for answering the rapid fire question round there, Ryan. And then, before we sign off, is there anything you'd like to sort of mention? Any plugs? Anything to take the stage on that one, Ryan?
I mean, obviously, number one, get the book. Stop waiting, start investing. So honestly, if you're from the UK and you're probably a beginner to intermediate investor, you're a bit overwhelmed, don't know where to start. We've covered a lot of the key concepts in this podcast, honest with you, so you can probably get started. If you want it in written format with a bit more content, it's all in there. Other than that, I'm literally on every single social media platform at Making Money Simple. So feel free to, if you've got any questions, to DM me on Instagram at any point. Always happy to help. And I do also do one-on-one coaching and run 4-week investing crash courses throughout the year. So if you want any more hands-on support, just give me a shout on Instagram. But other than that, I'm always making content on every social media. So if you want some investing content on your feed, just drop me a follow, and hopefully the algorithm shows it to you and doesn't hide
it. Nice. And I'll make sure I'll put those in the show notes as well for anyone listening. Ryan, so thank you very much for your time. You dropped a lot of good gems for the listeners, and especially for people who's interested in getting started in the investing world. So appreciate all the work that you're doing, smashing it out there. And continue that. And I'd love to, have you back on a show in the future, see how you're getting on. Maybe another book in the works or something.
No, that sounds good, Greg. Thanks for having me on, mate. And I appreciate everyone listening as well. And any questions at any point, just drop me a DM on Instagram, and hopefully come back on the podcast maybe in 2 years after I've had a year off, and then we can see what I'm doing at that point.
Nice, good stuff. All right, Ryan, thanks a lot.
Cheers, Greg.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. If you need more help, you can check out our free guides and services on our website, freedombeforefi.com. If you have a burning question or just want to chat, don't hesitate to drop me an email at greg@freedombeforefi.com. If you found the show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can click follow on Spotify, Apple, or the app you're currently using right now. If you think the episode will help a friend or a colleague, feel free to share it with them. And lastly, if you learned just one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. That would help us out loads.